Hello, and welcome to a special video where I'm going to take a break from my normal Magic the Gathering pre-con content to talk about another card game that's very close to my heart, which is the discontinued and dead, unfortunately, Transformers TCG. It's a very fun game, and you know what? I've got no Magic the Gathering content coming up for a while I work on the Planeswalker decks season, which is coming up, so I thought, let's have an extra video in November where I talk about a different card game entirely, and I just want to gush about that. So yeah, as I said, normally I talk about Magic the Gathering pre-cons, so we're going to be a little bit different here. I've got you now. I'm going to talk about Transformers the card game, and you're going to listen, and you're going to appreciate it, and we're just going to get on with it. So Transformers, for those of you who don't know, is like a nearly 40-year-old franchise about transforming robots who fight each other. And you've got Autobots who are good and Decepticons who are evil. It's a franchise that has spawned movies, games, TV series, all that. And also toys. Obviously, like a load of toys. That's the whole point of the lore and the franchise around it, is really just to sell a bunch of cars that turn into robots, which is fine, absolutely fine with these. Transformers is a franchise that's very close to my heart. But we're actually going to talk about games, specifically card games, because obviously that's the whole point of the video. There's a Transformers card game. So before the Transformers showed up in this weird Universe Beyond Brothers War supplemental set, and before Wizards of the Coast decide to just absorb all pop culture IPs into the all-devouring Unicron maw that is Universes Beyond, there was an actual licensed Transformers card game, also by Hasbro, because Hasbro own the own the rights and brands and stuff for Transformers. And yeah, this came out a few years ago, I want to say 2018, and unfortunately it lasted about 2 years and it did an Optimus Prime and it died, mostly because of the pandemic didn't really help. It just got low like sales figures, like there were supply issues, a whole bunch of things. Basically, it succumbed to the 2 year curse that a lot of card games that aren't the big three, Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, kind of succumb to. They last 2 years and then this kind of just die out. But despite that, having quite a limited run, it managed to have 5 sets. So it had a base set, it had the Rise of the Combiners, it had the two Siege sets, and it finished on Titan Masters. And that was, I want to say, back in 2020, yeah, because it was around the time all the pandemic was kicking off. So it managed to get kind of a lot of content out there in its limited time. So the way it came packaged, you got booster packs, kind of same way as normal. These booster packs contained 8 battle cards, which are what you use to build your deck, and also a double-faced foil character card. Every pack had one. They were always foil, which was really nice. A really nice, actually, a really underrated thing, which I thought is that each pack contained like a little kind of index card sized bit of just kind of stiff white card to make sure like the foil wouldn't like bend or get damaged in the packet, which I thought was actually a really nice touch. And also, if you buy a lot of them, you then have a bunch of index cards which you can use for other things, which is kind of whatever. But yeah, this is how they came. And there was also obviously a bunch of like box products as well. So you obviously had the usual kind of like starter sets, but also you had like these kind of gift sets for like Metroplex Devastator, Soundwave, and Blaster was like an anniversary set for the 35th anniversary. It is the 40th anniversary of Transformers next year, by the way, because it was 1984, I believe it came out, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so you had these kind of box products. These are essentially like the version of pre-cons was this, although the Soundwave Blaster thing is kind of more of a Magic the Gathering dual deck where they were designed to be played against one another. So how do you actually play the game? Because there's obviously, I mean, that's what I'm going to talk about. That's kind of where I have a lot of fun with the game. Is its kind of gameplay and strategies. It plays a lot faster than Magic the Gathering, and we're going to talk about that. So. To play the game, you need a deck of at least 40 battle cards, and you also need a team of Transformers. But how do you build a team? Let's talk about that. So, this is a character card. So these are much bigger than the battle cards. These are kind of trying to think of what to compare the size to. Like in Magic the Gathering, you have like the like if you do Plane Chase, these are about the size of like Plane Chase cards and stuff. So actually finding sleeves for them is kind of a pain because they're big. If you want to try and find a sleeve for Metroplex, that's ridiculous. Metroplex is like an A5 sheet of paper. It's absolutely enormous character card. But let's go through the elements of a character card. So you got the character's name. What's an important thing is so they all have like a little subtitle. So in this case, Thundercracker, Mac Warrior. You can't have the exact same character on the team, but you can have multiples of the same character as long as they have different subtitles. So if you had a different Thundercracker with a different name, you could different subtitle. You could have two Thundercrackers on your team. You've got their attack value, which is how much damage they do. You've got their defense value, which is how much damage they block when they get attacked. You've got their health value, which is how much damage they can take before they get KO'd. You've got their faction, which is either Autobot or Decepticon or Mercenary in some of the later sets. I think that's it. I don't think there's any other factions. You've got these kind of little tags at the top here, like Plane or Ranged or Melee or Specialist or Leader, stuff like that. It's kind of like creature types in Magic the Gathering. They don't do anything rules wise, but they interact with certain cards. Like we'll see. Well, as you can see on Thundercracker here, his ability when you flip to this mode does 2 damage to a melee enemy. So yeah. You also have says whether they're in alt mode or bot mode. Some characters have also a slightly different tweak on this. They might have like combiner mode or head mode. We'll look at that when we get to it, when we start looking at kind of like the gimmicks of the set. And and then you have the abilities that both sides. There's very few like vanilla cards in the game. Most characters do have an ability, which is normally like it's normally when like you transform to one side, you get an ability when you transform them to one side, and so when you flip to this mode, something will happen, or they'll have a passive ability. So very few actual like vanilla cards, and the ones that do usually have like pretty good stats. In terms of like how the stats work out, Thundercracker actually is not a great example, but typically when they're in bot mode, they have slightly higher attack. When they're in alt mode, they typically have slightly higher defense. So there you go. So you also got these stars at the bottom of the card here, laid out like this. And when you're building your team, you are limited to having a star limit of 25. That's kind of how you build your team, is by saying like, right, you can have a maximum of 25 stars worth of characters. So obviously you can have a bunch of cheaper characters. For example, like all the Insecticons are fairly cheap, so you could have like 4 of them, or you could have like maybe like 2 super powerful characters, who add up to 25. It's fairly balanced. Obviously, there's pros and cons for either going wide or going big. But most teams, I think, will usually be like 3 characters. What's really nice here, I like the little aside here, is that all the Seekers add up to 25, so you can absolutely have a team of the original 3 Decepticon Seekers, which is great. Aside from that, there's not really any other restrictions for building a team. Like you can quite happily have Autobots and Decepticons on the same team. You don't have to like limit yourself to one faction. There are, because some characters might interact with certain abilities in different ways. So yeah, you can have that synergy. There's actually kind of a lot of freedom as long as you stick to that 25 stars. You're basically all right. You can quite freely mix Autobot and Decepticon characters, which is pretty nice. So let's get into building a deck. So we said it's kind of like 40 of these battle cards. Battle cards are either actions or upgrades. So actions are stuff you play them, kind of like instants or sorceries. In Magic, you play them and they have the effect, and then you discard them. Upgrades are like equipment or auras. They come down, you put them on a character, and they give them extra stats or abilities, that kind of thing. So here we have actions and upgrades. So let's look at how actions are put together. So you have like the name of it, you have the effect. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. And then you have like this little battle icon in the top corner here. And we're going to talk about those battle icons because that's kind of a big integral part of the game. And like part of the reason why I really like it actually has this kind of like random element to it. And when that usually comes up when it comes to actually fighting, actual combat between characters. So we'll get into that. So actions are pretty straightforward. Upgrades, there's a little bit more to them. So once again, we've got the name, we've got the battle icons, we've got the type. So there are 3 types of upgrades. There are weapons, armors, and utilities. So a character can have 1 weapon, 1 armor, 1 utility. There are some characters who can sort of play around for that. For example, there's a version of Megatron who can have 3 weapons, which is pretty fun. And yeah, that's kind of limits. So you have a character who's fully kitted out with a weapon and armor, and that's pretty cool. Obviously, then you've got like the upgrades effects, which gives the character has it, and if it gives any attack or defense increases, then it'll be at the bottom here. You have got some actions and utilities and stuff that do have some sort of like limitations or extra kind of abilities. For example, like ability of Bumblebee, you can put that on any character, but if it's specifically on Bumblebee anti-attacks, you get the effect. You got stuff like aerial recon, which you can only put on planes. So when a character is in alt mode and has the plane tag, then that's the only time you can put this on it. It stays on it when they transform, though. It's not kind of like, I guess, like magic when you have like an aura. If an aura says like, oh, I know, enchant a red creature, and that creature became like not red, and it would fall off. So that doesn't happen, which is nice. And also like an example here, Scoundrel's Blaster, which can only go on Decepticons. But again, apart from that, very few limitations in usually what upgrades can go on what. You've also got some cards that will have a star value of their own, which means they're usually like a much more powerful effect. And we'll get into this later because there's not really like a resource system in Transformers. We'll get into it when we talk about gameplay, but you don't have to like pay mana or resources for these. You just get to play. You just get to play them without really doing anything. So stars are kind of a way of limiting the more powerful cards because your team and deck in total can only have 25 stars. So it's a nice way actually of if you build a team, let's say, of your favorite characters and it's 23 stars and like, oh, there's no characters, only 2 stars, but like, oh, I can take 2 of these, like say 2 Leap of Faith, and that'll push me up to 25. So I think, that's a nice way. And also, as I say, it's a nice way of balancing slightly more powerful cards. And in terms of playsets, you are limited to 3 copies of a card, of a battle card in your deck. So let's actually get into the gameplay, how a game actually looks. So this is kind of like the setup for the start of a game. So all characters in your team start off in alt mode. They're just driving or flying along. You draw a opening hand of 3 cards. You got a deck off to your side there. You'll have a scrap pile, your discard pile, and also definitely need some dice in this to track damage. So what actually happens on the turn? So on your turn, you start off by drawing a card. There's no maximum hand size, which is really nice. And then you can do any of the following in any order. You can play an action, you can play an upgrade, and you can transform a character. And then once you've done as many of those things as you want, then you attack an enemy tapped character with one of your untapped characters. If all the enemy characters are untapped, then you get free choice of who to go for. And your character becomes tapped as part of the attack. So typically first turn is all the characters untapped. Whoever goes first is basically going to kind of set the tempo of the game by like, they get free choice. They choose their first character to attack with. And then on the opponent's first turn, they then have to attack that tapped character. And it works out that way. So there is also this kind of nice balancing thing to kind of, to balance out going first, because going first is really strong actually in this game. So if you're going first, you cannot play actions or upgrades. On your first turn, you can only do a transform. And if you're going second, you can only transform and do an action or an upgrade on your first turn. But then, on your second turn, it reverts normal. Then you can play an action and an upgrade and do a transform. You do all 3 things. There's a cheeky house rule I like to do for when I play at home with my wife or my friends. Is add in this extra kind of house rule, an extra action, a recharge, we call it, because you'll see you actually go through the deck pretty quickly when playing. So you actually don't actually get to see or play much of the cards. So what we like to do is this rule where you can forfeit playing an action and your upgrade to recharge and draw 2 cards. Can't do that on your first turn because you can't play the action and the upgrade, so you can't do it. But future turns you can essentially skip playing cards to draw more cards essentially. So yeah, and that's worked out pretty good. We actually don't use it that often because typically like the game plays so quickly, like playing cards is actually pretty vital to do to sort of keep ahead. And that's it really. I mean, so it's quite simple rules, but there is actually a lot of strategy to it, which I really like. So we're going to take a look at example this 10. So let's say this first turn you've drawn a new card, the Flamethrower, and you transform Ironhide, and you're about to attack with Ironhide. So let's do that. So let's say Ironhide's going to go into Skywarp. How does that battle work? So the battle process is you do any when this character attacks, defends, triggers. and then the attacking player reveals the top 2 cards of their deck and gets bonuses depending on the battle icons in the top corner. What gets revealed, and you add those icons to the character's attack value to get their final value. Defending player does the same. They add any relevant icons to their defense value. The defending character then takes damage equal to the attacker's attack value minus their defense value, which can be 0 damage. If the defending player then has damage equal to their health, they are KO'd and removed from the game, and then all the battle cards that were revealed that were flipped over get discarded. So these battle icons, let's talk about them. So say you flip these from the top of your deck. So for every orange you flip over, that's +1 attack. For every blue you flip over, it's +1 defense. If you flip over a white, you flip over 2 more cards. You only do that once per battle. So if you flip over multiple white icons, you don't like keep going. You just do it once. So basically this means the attacker wants to flip orange icons, the defender wants to flip blue icons. So let's see how this works out with the example. So let's say this is what Ironhide flips. So he flips 1 orange, he flips a white, so which means he flips 2 more. He flips over a blank one, which is Medic, which gives no bonus, and the blue one from Drill Arms, which gives him +1 defense, which is useless because he's attacking. So out of all that, he gets +1 attack. And then say this is Skywarp's flip. So he flips 2 cards. He gets the 2 blue icons from Handheld Blast, which is +2 defense, and he gets no icons from Plasma Burst, so that's no bonus. So in total, Ironhide has 4 attack +1 from the orange icon, which is 5. Skywarp has defense 2 +2 blue icons, gives him a defense of 4. 5 minus 4 is 1, so bam, Skywarp takes 1 damage. And that's it, and that's the battle process. And then all those cards would get discarded. So you actually mill through your deck pretty quickly. One point thing to note is that milling out, if you deck out, you don't lose. It's not like Magic. You just shuffle up and you just start again essentially. So that's pretty good because you do go through your deck really really quickly. Because assuming 2 teams of 3 characters, you're going to be milling at least 12 cards because you mill when you attack and you mill when you defend. So yeah. Let's talk about what happens with actual KO'd characters. So you don't put excess damage on them, you only put damage on them that's exactly enough to KO them. So they get placed in the KO area, they're essentially, which is like the exiled zone in Magic the Gathering, they're essentially out of the game. You scrap all the upgrades that are on them, you keep the damage marked on them, they can't have damage removed from them. They can transform on your turn, you can choose to transform them, but their abilities won't trigger. Basically all their text box is essentially completely blank. And they cannot be targeted by cards or abilities unless those cards can specifically target a card in the KO area. And you lose when all your characters are KO'd, so pretty straightforward and simple. And then let's talk about like keywords that affect battles. So bold is usually 1 to 3. That means when you're attacking, you flip over more cards. So bold 1, you flip 1 more card. Bold 2, you flip 2, etc. Tough is exactly the same, but on defense. So if you are defending and you have tough, you flip over more cards. And pierce just means you do minimum damage when you're attacking. So for example, pierce 3, you do at least 3 damage when attacking, no matter what the defender's final defense value is. You always do at least that much damage, which is pretty important to bust through some really defensive characters. There's a few other colours of battle icons which we're going to talk about. So we've got black and green. So black, when you flip it over, gives you extra pierce, gives you pierce 1, and that adds up. So if you flip like 2 black icons, you get pierce 2 on the attack, which is, I say, good. So you're definitely going to inflict minimum damage. Green is a little bit special. You've got the remind text here. After each battle, you can swap 1 card from your hand with one of your flipped green cards. So green cards are, ones that you might want to keep. So there's a healing one here. It's like you might flip over and just like, oh man, I really need that healing card, so I can at least swap a card I don't need in my hand for that, for that card. But the green cards, we're going to start diving into the gimmicks now of the various sets. The green cards actually show up on the combiner cards, on the Enigma cards. So it's Transformers. There's a whole bunch of characters who can combine into a bigger robot. So for example, here we've got the aerial bots and the aerial bot Enigma. So these little combiner cards are half the size of normal character cards, but they're folded over. They're kind of like little greeting cards. So on one side they have the character art, on the other side they have their alt mode, and then when you open it up, it is like a weird jigsaw. We'll see. So all the combined teams sort of essentially work the same. So Aerial Bot Enigma has green, so when you flip it over, you definitely get to keep it, which is important because for these combined teams, this is how you combine by playing the cards like this, your Enigma. So for this example, if you have 5 Aerial Bots in bot mode on the battlefield or in your KO area, so that matters why you can transform KO'd characters, combine them into Superion Sky Protector. And a combiner begins untapped, has all damage from the combined characters, and keeps one upgrade in each slot. So, as I say, you jigsaw these out, and it becomes this, and it's amazing. I love these combiner cards. It's so much fun to unfold all the cards and jigsaw them together. It's great. Combiners aren't really that great, honestly, because they start off kind of damaged. They start off with all the damage that was on their component parts, and then you've only got one character. It's one really big, good character, but it can be whittled down really quickly. But yeah, they're super fun. In terms of other gimmicks, the game actually did a lot of experimenting with stuff. So we had these secret actions in the siege sets. So these are essentially kind of a bit like trap cards, I'd say, from Yu-Gi-Oh. So you've got the rules there to the side. You play it face down. At the end of your opponent's turn, you put this in your scrap pile. So basically, you play it on your turn. You've got one turn for it to meet the condition, which is the reveal. But if it's not, then you discard it. It's not. It doesn't just sit there indefinitely. And these can be pretty niche. I don't have much experience playing with these because basically it's super hard to get. I'm not super interested in them. There are some characters have synergies with secret actions, but I haven't been really able to get my hands on them, or I'm not too interested because they're very niche in what their effects. But even the score here, when one of your Decepticons would take more than enough attack damage to be KO'd, do the extra attack damage to the attacker, so you get to switch excess damage. It's pretty cool. They all have pretty specific conditions, but they're fine. They're fine, In terms of other gimmicks we've had, so in the Titan Master set, the last set, we had stratagems, which are these cards that you use to upgrade your character a little bit more. So they usually have a star value. Again, it's a nice way of kind of bumping up to make sure you hit that 25 star limit. And you just gives the character a little extra effect. So for example, Brawn here, when your Brawn demolitions, so it has to go on that specific version of the character. When he defends, he gets extra defense equal to the attacker's bold value. So again, kind of very specific and niche. But again, it's 1 star. What are you going to do? If you can't meet it, it's fine. We've also had fun characters like the Battle Masters, who are characters they're small, cheap characters, kind of low stats, but when they get KO'd, they turn into upgrades for a character, which is pretty fun. We've also had Headmasters, that was in the last set, Titan Masters. So the way this works is you have characters who have body mode, and you have their head in head mode, and you can combine these however you want. So basically, a character starts off with the head on them, and they start off in alt mode as normal, and that kind of thing. But when the body gets KO'd, the head jumps off and transforms into their little headmaster mode, which is pretty cool. And then they have really low stats, but it's another character. I think it's just kind of a fun little gimmick here. So let's talk about a resource. I did say this game doesn't use a resource system like Magic the Gathering. You haven't got mana or anything, and they could have implemented one, right? Because in Transformers you have Energon, so you could have easily said some cards are worth a certain amount of Energon to play, and they don't do that. If you want to play an action, you just play it. If you want to play an upgrade, you just play it. And what this means is that all the cards are essentially kind of balanced against each other. So this example here, all these weapon upgrades that give bold are all, they're all perfectly balanced, I think. So you have the Handheld Blaster, which is bold 1, which is the lowest value, but it has 2 blue icons. It's one of the few cards that has two battle icons. So that is actually, quite valuable. Then you have Flamethrower, which is in the middle of the pack here, which just gives bold 2 and has 1 icon. And then you have Power Punch, which is bold 3, but after the upgraded character attacks, you scrap the card. You only get it for one use. So I would say these three, are a good example of how you can sort of essentially balance the effect without needing to do resources. And then having said that, actually the icons, kind of like I said there with Handheld Blaster, are actually a way of kind of balancing the card as well. So all these cards don't have any icons, so they're actually useless when you flip them because they don't give you anything, but their effects are really, really strong. So the EM24 laser launcher is a weapon that gives +3 attack, which is really big. Ice Steel Function is an action that lets you reanimate a character for a turn. Photon Bomb does 2 damage to every character, and like this is a game where like indirect burn damage is really really strong because it doesn't get stopped by defense. But again, these are balanced by the fact they are completely useless to you if you flip them during a fight. So yeah, I think that's a pretty fun way of balancing out these cards without needing to use resources. Having said that, there are a few cards that do sort of do a resource kind of thing, like you have to jump through some hoops. So superior cannon, there's the whole range of these like superior armor and stuff. These can only be played if you've played a specific action in the turn before. Tech research, but it gives bold 4. Master Sword is the only one like this, as far as I can remember, where it has to replace a weapon that a character already has. So it's essentially like you're essentially trading a weapon you already have for this one, and it gives obviously a really good effect. And then Inferno Breath here is relying on like tapping one of your characters to get the effect. So again, that's a kind of another way of doing resources. So there were definitely options. Like if you want to balance out more, they could say like, oh, as an additional cost to play this upgrade direction, like discard a blue card or an orange card, or stuff like that. There were definitely ways around it. So I do really like this game. It's not obviously completely perfect. There are some gripes I have with it, which I'm going to get into now. So kind of going back to Magic the Gathering, because that's a big touchstone using for this video. So in Magic the Gathering, we obviously have the color pie, which defines what colors can and can't do, and it's really integral to determining how cards are designed and how decks are built. Now we don't really have that in Transformers because aside from a very very few number of cards, all these cards are generic. Like any deck can use these cards, which kind of leads to decks, I think, being a little bit samey because basically, like every deck wants Grenade Launcher, every deck wants Improvised Shield, every deck would want to have Belligerence because all these cards are really really strong and always good. Like you always want Improvised Shield because it's like double oranges when you attack. You want Grenade Launcher because it gives a huge attack buff with no real downside. You always want Belligerence because this turns a potentially like whiffed turn where you flip a bunch of blues when attacking, and your opponent flips a bunch of blues, and this turns it into like, oh, every blue is an orange. Like every deck wants that to like push through damage. It just means that decks can like just end up not having a lot of identity, because I've built a few decks for the game to like teach people how to play, and very quickly on, I was like, wow, a lot of these decks feel really, really similar because they're using a lot of the same cards. So in the end, what I ended up doing was building kind of like 225 like cores, which have stuff like Grenade Launcher and a bunch of other staple cards, and then like smaller like 15 card decks for the actual kind of intended team or strategy, and then you like mash those together because like I'm not building the same deck like 8 times, So yeah, that's one thing I'd say, because there are no kind of factions or anything. It does make deck building kind of a bit homogenous. So another Magic the Gathering touchstone is we have a lot of graveyard interactions. Get stuff from your graveyard, and you would think that in a game where you mill a lot as part of like just attacking, there'd be some graveyard interaction or scrap pile interaction, and there really really isn't. There's like a few characters that do it, like Megatron here, Living Weapon. This is like the rare version of Megatron. Like when you flip to this mode, you get a weapon from your scrap pile back to your hand. Okay, and like Reclaim, which is like pretty much the only battle card which lets you get stuff from your scrap pile back into your hand or deck in some way. So yeah, that's kind of a little disappointing. There's not a lot of ways of getting stuff you flipped back. So it does mean that like you could potentially flip all 3 copies of like your really good card, and then you've just got no way of getting it back until you shuffle through, which is really kind of frustrating. I say there are a few ways of getting it, but like not enough. There's not like a nice common like, oh, get an upgrade from your scrap pile back into your hand, or an action back into your hand. So that's a little bit annoying. The other annoying thing is obviously just due to general scarcity with the set. Like obviously the print run is over. Some of the later sets were not done in super high quantities. So it just means trying to like collect the set and like get certain characters is really really difficult, and like to track them down stuff. I had a hell of a time trying to track down some cards I needed for like one of the decks, just because it's really so many places are out of stock or just don't stock it at all because it doesn't sell that well. And also like weirdly, the game had like such a weirdly high number of like promos and stuff for like such a small game. So like Cliffjump here, Cliffjump is one of my favorite characters in the Transformers franchise, and like he was weirdly like a promo card. So he's got slightly different art style here. This because like he was in they did a Energon edition, which was kind of like a essentially like a Masters edition, like in Magic the Gathering, where they reprinted certain cards and characters, but that was still hard to get a hold of. So this means like Cliffjumper, who's like one of my favorite characters, and for some reason was chosen a promo. And like, there's no reason why he should be a promo. It's Cliffjumper. I mean, I love the character, but like, he's nothing special. It's like ridiculously hard to get hold of and really expensive. Same with like Windsweeper, who was in the last set. He's like a super rare card, and like he's such a obscure nobody character, but he has such a strong effect, and he like easily goes for like £200. It's insane. It's just absolutely insane. So really hard, and it's getting harder to like keep collecting the cards for the game. Another quibble I have is that the starter decks are absolute absolute trash. So the easiest thing in the world, right, would be excuse me, would be to do like an Autobot starter deck and a Decepticon starter deck, right? That's like the easiest thing to do. But no, what we got here. So there were two starter decks. So the first one, the one on the left, came with 4 Autobots and just one deck of 40 cards. And like the way it said was like, oh, split the Autobots into 2 teams of 2 and split like the deck into 2 decks of 20. Like, why? There's no need for that at all. And it's not like indicative of how a deck is built or how the game is played. You've got a much smaller team and much smaller deck. And they didn't learn the lesson because in the other start set, the second one, is exactly the same. You've only got 2 Autobot characters, you've got 2 Decepticon characters who are honestly, like, even by starter set standards, really, really weak. Like, they're really underpowered. So like they wouldn't be useful even in the main game, like to transfer them over. And again, it was like one deck of 40 cards, which were meant to split between two players. So really, they really shat the bed on these starter sets. Like the easiest thing to do is have an Autobot one and a Decepticon one. That's the easiest thing to do, but whatever. And then this is like a gripe that's not really the game's fault. It's just a shame that it ended before we got some really like iconic stuff. Like, so we never got like Galvatron and like Cyclones and Scourge, which have been like kind of fun characters, or like Hot Rod, or no, we have got Hot Rod, like Rodimus, or like kind of characters from like the later end of G1. Would have been fun. I believe there were rumors of like there was going to be a Beast Wars set, so like Optimus Primal and Cheetor and like Tyrannosaurus, Megatron, like that would have been kind of fun. And an idea I've seen floated around a lot is the idea of like this like an arch enemy kind of mode, but using Unicron as like the arch enemy player, and 3 other players would go against him. And that was an idea that I've seen floated around. Whether or not it was going to happen is up for debate, but like it would have been a really fun idea if that had gone ahead. Like, do Unicron arch enemy, because it's Hasbro, it's Wizards of the Coast. Like, they're going to look at Magic and be like, oh, that works really well in that, and people like it, so we'll do that and that. But whatever. So that's not a gripe against the game. It's just that's kind of the what could have been. But overall, that was my rambling godless mess of talking about the Transformers card game. I say Transformers is a franchise I really, really love, and I just really wanted to talk about it, so there we go. But we will be back with normal Magic the Gathering content soon. I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, whatever, it's fine. It's your choice, not your dad. But yeah, we'll be back soon with more Magic the Gathering content where we talk about pre-constructed decks. I just hope you enjoyed this very brief foray into the Transformers card game. So if you did watch, thanks for watching and listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.